Okay, everyone, I think we're going to go ahead and get started now. My name is Kent Bishop. I'm in marketing here at Diem Technologies. Today we're going to share with you some of the new features and functionality in RightFax 10.6. We're going to be joined in just a few minutes by Joshua Butcher, who's one of our tech specialists here, and he's going to walk us through all those features. So we're going to have a Q&A session at the very end. Dave Brenner from OpenText will be joining us to answer some of those questions as well. To submit a question for the Q&A session, there's a questions area on the GoToWebinar window. So you can type in a question there. We'll get to it at the end and have that answer back for you. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and start and jump right into it. So about Diem Technologies, I think most of you on the call today are familiar with Diem. We're a RightFax Platinum partner with OpenText, and we've been around since 1990. We were one of the very first RightFax partners, in fact, in '93. So we have 20 or more years of RightFax and enterprise fax experience in general. We provide first-line support, being that we are a Platinum partner. So Diem does something a little unique. Everyone that uses maintenance and support for the RightFax system through Diem Technologies gets access to RightFax admin training. We do monthly classes. You can come to our offices here in Dallas, and as part of the deal, you get trained for 2 days for free from our tech support experts. So we provide two main types of first-line support. One is a 6x12 contract. The other, for customers that are more mission critical, we have a 7x24 option as well. We primarily work in the fax realm, but we also touch a couple of other things that are fax related, such as document capture, secure information exchange, and document management. As I mentioned, we're all things fax. We're pretty much RightFax centric here. But deployment models are changing, especially in the last couple of years with people moving to the cloud. So we now offer a hybrid fax solution with RightFax Connect, allowing you to outsource the telco portion, the channels, if you will, of a RightFax installation to the cloud. For someone that needs a much simpler installation, we offer Fax Appliances, as well as full cloud deployment with EasyLink, as well as RightFax On Demand. So under our ECM Solutions, Enterprise Content Management Solutions umbrella, we focus on four major offerings. SciGen, which is an advanced document capture solution. That's software that allows you to scan images or take electronic images and extract data from those to either push and automate off to a different back office systems, or maybe you need to push data and documents to a document management system. Teleform does some of that as well. It specializes in forms processing and allows you to push to back office systems, both push to SharePoint and both import from RightFax. We also, OpenText now has Secure Mail and Secure MFT under the Secure IX umbrella. That's cloud-based secure information exchange. So if you're ever on the market for that, give us a call. We might be able to help you out there, as well as some document management offerings too, to store and search and retrieve documents, whether it be faxes or otherwise. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Joshua Butcher, who's going to walk us through today. He's a technical services engineer, and he has a lot of years of RightFax experience. So he will walk you through today, and without further ado, I will turn it over to you, Joshua.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, hello, folks. My name is Joshua Butcher, as it says here. We're going to be walking through some of the newer features of RightFax 10.6. We're not going to touch every single little tiny feature, but we're going to go over some of the major umbrella stuff, the ones that might be pretty interesting to you. The first thing I want to do before we kind of get into the different little categories, I just want to quickly just talk about the running platforms. So what operating systems are going to be effective for what we're trying to do? On the server side for RightFax 10.6, these are the supported operating systems. We're looking at Windows 2008, 2008 R2, in Windows 2012. 2012 R2 is not yet supported yet. It is slated for a feature pack or something in the future. Right now, 2012 is supported. On the client side, we're looking at Windows 8 and Windows 7. Windows XP is being discontinued for support when it comes to using fax utility or print-to-fax. Now, this is specifically for the 10.6 clients. So if you have a Windows XP client and you have to have those, you're going to need to use older versions of the clients to work with a server, whether it's RightFax 10 or 10.5. So those are the major operating systems we're looking at. All of this now also supports up to Office 2013. So you can have Office 2013 will run fine with the server and client environments, and actually I've been testing it out and it works pretty nicely actually. So these are our major operating system platforms of support. So let's get into the categories. We're going to see how this is done. And there's basically 4 major categories of how we're going to be looking at these pieces here. And the first one is compatibility. Just really what is it that's anything that's new for support working with RightFax, or any latest and the greatest what we're supporting working with. Compliance and security, basically what is it that's making changes. You've noticed, if you've been looking at the RightFax changes of versions over time here, there's been a huge push for a lot of these categories of movement as far as more security, more auditing, more tracking, more capability like that, all leading to larger scale using an enterprise world and being able to track stuff. So we'll see some changes here for compliance and security. We'll see some changes for enterprise grades, so making this even more of an enterprise server environment. It already is an enterprise server environment, but we're going to see improvements on that area. And then we're going to see some ease of administration and usage. So first of all, we'll go ahead and look at compatibility. We'll divide this really into kind of 2 different pieces. Our Microsoft servers and then other integrations are involved. So Microsoft servers, we now have support for SharePoint 2013, Exchange 2013, and support for Exchange Web Services 2010-2013. Now, what that basically is, it's an applet, or it's a configuration applet on the RightFax server that you can set up that will point to Exchange running web services. So not an install connector, but web services with like a transport role. So users can be able to send that without having to install a connector on the actual Exchange server. That's what that's for. And that's support for Exchange 2010 as well as 2013 with the client access role of Exchange. New support for SAP, ECC 6, EP4, and ECC 7 for SAP. IBM WebSphere 7 and 7.5. And of course, the latest and greatest of the MFP releases, Xerox, HP, Konica Minolta, Ricoh. All the latest ones are supported and been tested with and working on. So those are major categories here on compatibility. We're going to go ahead and look into compliance and security at this point. So one of the, probably what I think the crowning gem here of the 10.6 release is something called the Encryption Module. What the Encryption Module does is it's an encryption of the image directory. But I want to give a real quick idea of what the image directory looks like and why this is significant and its change. So RightFax in general, and all the other versions of it, including 10.6, would store all the faxes of everything you've sent or received into a folder called image. And that's where everything would go. In 10.5, we saw a major shift in architecture here, where we're going to hashed image directories. So instead of every single file all in one folder, which can get into thousands, if not more, they'll all be divided up into different little subfolders based on their names. A great division, great way of doing it. We saw a major performance change on RightFax when it comes to processing and working with it in 10.5's environment. What 10.6 is doing is it's allowing us to encrypt that directory. So not only is it hashed out and broken out like that, but it's going to be encrypted and we can lock it down. So this is called the Encryption Module. Some more information on the Encryption Module here. It's an optional supported module. It's not included, so it is something you need to purchase and license. It encrypts all the faxes stored in the image directory. And if you look down below, I have a little screenshot there of my image file and the little encryption file next to it. I did try to open it before and after, so I opened up the little RightFax viewer, and it opened fine. I put the encryption on there, and it sure enough did lock it down. So it is bringing it in there. So it's basically encrypting and working with all new files it's trying to process and go across. And if you have old ones that are already in place, there's some command line tools that you can do through the administrative tools that will encrypt the old stuff. So this is really encrypting all the directories. That encrypts the data set at a triple DDS. Microsoft DS, just meaning 64-bit, triple is really 3 times to 192-bit. So that's a type of encryption. Any and all authorized access is tracked. This is done to the fax history. So when anyone looks at a fax image at any given point at this point, and the only real method they can do to access at this point is using the RightFax tools, it'll be tracked in the history, the show history of the fax. Any and all unauthorized access is just denied. So if someone rolls after the image folder, copies it over, and tries to open it, they can't. Now, what this really provides support for are the different types of compliance rules and stuff that are out there, like PCI, DSS, and HIPAA compliance, that really stress on having encrypted information, including encrypted stuff sitting in place. So when it was sitting in the RightFax image directory, it wasn't encrypted yet. So even if you moved it to the Alchemy environment or something in this other world, so where it does get locked down, it still wasn't encrypted by the time it got there. So this kind of helps for those compliance. Another release here on compliance and security is an update called RightFax Vault. This is the update for the RightFax connector to Alchemy. So when it comes to archiving the RightFax data, this is basically an updated version of that. So scalable, efficient fax archiving lets you just work with things a little cleaner. It's re-architect. Basically, it's just kind of a redesign, a little bit better flow, and a better structure for it. This is in use for the existing fax archive bundles that you may already have working with the product or the Alchemy database you may already have in place. So this is just basically allowing you to archive your faxes from RightFax into an Alchemy database, and it's just an updated version that allows that to go. All right, we talked on compatibility and compliance and security. Now we're going to go into enterprise grade. These next two categories get a little bit thicker as far as more features and more stuff we'll look at. So enterprise grade. So one of the significant changes here is the uses of a shared services module. Now, if you're not really familiar with that, in RightFax 9.4, 10.5, the supported versions right now, basically how this works is you could have up to 4 different servers that are sharing the same SQL database. So this could be 4 separate running computers with all their services, all their work servers and all their different settings, all sharing the same SQL database and the same image directory. So if one server was to go out and explode or whatever was to happen, the other servers would not miss a beat and they continue to run and continue to go. They're not replicated, they're not shared to each other, they're all in the same data, they're all stored in the same spot. So we're not waiting on delayed replication time or weird stuff like that. Well, up to 10.5, we will have a 4-node collective. So coming in RightFax 10.6, throw a few more B's out here, we're now looking at up to a 12-node collective, which is pretty exhaustive. So that's a pretty intense environment. So this is 12 possible physical separate servers or virtual servers, it doesn't have to be physical, sharing the same SQL data information, which really means at this point, at this scale, you can pretty much handle any form of performance that you're really pushing at, no matter what. It's really what it comes down to. So this is truly an enterprise-grade upgrade. So you can have this going. And of course, you're not required to have 12 servers to make this work. So you don't need 12 Bs to make your honeypot code. That's just what it's for. So pretty significant in how this goes. To help that, there was some deployment enhancements also to help with that process. So if you were setting up 6 nodes or 8 nodes, there's some shared services propagation. So there's some service features, like if you needed to create an email gateway and several servers, there's features now that allows you to change those settings and really copy them over to the other servers, other ones in the node. So really major deployment changes there. There's also now support for a UAC, basically a user access control with Microsoft. If you've done any RightFax installs, you'll notice you have to turn off UAC in order to have a really effective install process. So now it is basically supported. So you don't have to turn off that level of security in order to get to the installation and how that works. So that's now supported. The last page here on deployment is working with Microsoft SCCM, which is a Microsoft System Center Configuration Manager. Some people have been using this, have been working with this as an official support in this environment, allowing us for deployment of client applications out to multiple users. We've always had options for unattended or silent installs. This just makes it easier to use it in client rollout tools, like patches and stuff that can be rolled out easier. So more deployment enhancements is what this is. A few things changes here as well on still in the enterprise grade of services and driver updates. One of the big changes that's really under the hood, that's a simple change but a wonderful change, or at least in my perspective of the tech support world, is default service recovery. Like the services that are created during the RightFax installation, Before, if a service was to stop, it could just stop, and you had to find out what was going on and go start it. But there's settings within Windows itself. You can tell it to restart services pretty normally in recovery, and all those kind of settings are being built into it. So some of the fine-tuned best practices that were happening with the OpenText Professional Services are now being implemented in the basic release of 10.6 for higher performance. Last little bit on here is there is a new Dialogic SDK 6.6, which basically offers some additional support for Avaya Communication Manager 7.5. Really opens up the doors for a lot of different SIP trunk providers that are out there that we might have some complications with. And it's kind of interesting here, it allows in-band DTMF signaling support for PRI and Fax Over IP. So DTMF is just those tones that you get on your phone when you press the buttons to dual tones. So it allows those tones and sounds to be transferred over PRI and Fax Over IP when before we can only work with broadband T1. So it's just a new update for basically routing large amounts of numbers to the same line. So we talk about compatibility, compliance and security, enterprise grade. The last little category we're going to talk about is ease of administration. A couple little bits in there. I got about 6 or 7 little different features in here to look at. First one here is the admin dashboard. If you've ever seen that before, it was an interesting start, but kind of basic and really didn't offer a whole lot of information. But now we're seeing the dashboard is really being updated where you can use it to track the status and really the life of multiple nodes in your collective, which is really helpful. So instead of having to open Enterprise Fax Manager and look through all 12 windows and queues and scroll through them, you can have a dashboard that gives you a quick status of what's going on. So it allows you to monitor the entire shared services collective and their associated remote dock transport servers, basically on one applet. It also includes now the history of channel utilization over time, so you can see who's doing what and how active they are and how busy they are. So it's just some add-ins, and we'll see this evolution of the dashboard continues to grow. Next section here is really 3 sections, is reporting and monitoring, and really we're talking about ease of administration. There's been some updates to the alerts and monitoring. Basically, there's been performance counters added into the RightFax alerts and monitoring so it can work and integrate Microsoft System Center Operation Manager, so MS SEOM. So basically, it allows you to integrate and track and work with that better in that process. So there's been basically just counters added in for integration with that, allowing for tracking. There's also some new Enterprise Fax Manager or Enterprise Fax Reporter reports. Some additional reports are added in. If you ever used that before, it basically pulls information from the SQL database and allows you to make reports and capture stuff. So now there's additional reports on using channel utilization. You notice there's a lot of theme here for channel utilization because a lot of people have been asking about this stuff. It happens to really clearly just identify groups with large amounts of volumes. You see different breakdowns here, points in a day when faxes are really hitting hard, and bottlenecks in production. So it really just lets you have better reporting. And the last little bit in this particular category is some fax notification improvements. And this is really talking about usually with SMTP notifications. So there's additional settings that are being allowed in. Like we can see there, administrators can now allow inbound ANI data to be in SMTP data. For outbound faxing, you can actually have the email subject line included in the notification, and you can even specify or even state that you want transmission speeds reported in the transmission, in the notification. So not only did your fax go, but how fast did it go? So pretty important stuff. A lot of major shifts going on this. This seems basic, but it's actually pretty intense understanding the support side of it. Web EFM, multi-browser support. Basically, Web EFM worked on FaxUtil before, or not FaxUtil, Enterprise Internet Explorer before. Now it's multi-browser support. If you see that picture there, that's actually my iPad I've opened up, and I went to my IP address of my fax server, and I pulled up Web EFM. There it was. I was able to log through, click in it, add on settings. It's not designed necessarily to work with iPads. I just want to show that multi-browser means multi-browser, and what this really can lead to. Particularly if you're remote and not on site, you might actually need to use Web EFM to jump in there and see what's going on. So very fantastic, actually, being able to see stuff like this and more accessibility into the product. There's been some fax aging improvements. Automatic fax aging. If you have an enterprise license of RightFax, you get this additional tab called aging in the groups called aging and archiving. If you're a business server, you don't see this option. You have to run the command line tool to be able to run this. But this is one of the features of the enterprise version. You can see on the left side there, you see 10.5 versus 10.6. And it's really we just have some more fancier customization here for fax aging. So a little more customized, a little more control. And really the last thing I'm going to talk about, the last of the new features here, and we'll be going to hear questions here pretty soon, is a per job conversion on PDFs. And this is a really interesting change in step here. One of the issues I've seen a lot over the years of support when it comes to PDFs is just the quality of the PDF. Not that it fails, just the quality can be weird. And there would be changes you can do on the server, little hacks you can do in the registry that would allow it to have better quality on certain kinds of PDFs. So you would improve one area, but you might deprove or ruin a different area. So basically what this is allowing is when a user attaches something, they can go to more options and specify what type of PDF they're doing. Is it a text, photo, and image? Is it a light tone? What are we talking about here, what we're sending? Basically what we're going this process. And it allows it to add additional flags when the fax does show up so the server knows how to best approach this particular PDF versus this PDFs in a generic manner. So this is, I think, pretty fantastic. I think we'll see a different quality change here for users sending out PDFs in this process. So those are our major features for 10.6. I personally think the ones that really stand out in my head pretty dramatically is the encrypted directory for the encryption module. Very impressive, I think, and I have testing now that's working very well on what I've been testing with. And that 12-node collective is kind of hard for me to wrap my head around. That just seems like so much servers to work in that environment. So it's a very impressive level of redundancy and high availability. So very heavily broken down. So the last little bit I want to go on here is just the path to RightFax 10.6. So we saw some of the features, so how do you get there? So really, the path to RightFax 10.6 is 10. something. So you either have to have 10.0 or 10.5 in order to either do an in-place upgrade or a migration. You can do either one. Both of them will work. So in-place upgradation, in-place server upgrades, simply you just install the software right in the same spot in that process. Or you can do a migration where you set up a brand new server. There are migration tools like the migration database upgrade tools where you can actually bring over your data. That helps with that. The only, I guess, concern with this is you make sure you're in that platform at 10.0 or 10.5. So if you're currently running a 9.4 environment and you want to get 10.6, you will have to do some level of mid-upgrade in order to get yourself in a 10.6 environment. It's just going to have to happen. All right, well, and that wraps up our little pieces here. So we're going to go ahead and move to the questions and see if we have some questions going.
Yeah, I don't have any questions yet, Joshua. Just to remind everyone, if you do have a question, there's a questions panel on the GoToWebinar bar on the side of your screen. If you have a question, go ahead and type it in. I'll relay it over to Joshua and Dave Brenner, who's going to be joining us now as well. I'll go ahead and unmute you, Dave. So we'll be able to answer those for you. Worst case scenario, if you have a question that comes to mind, maybe a couple hours later, you can actually email us or give us a call, and we can walk you through it. While we're waiting for some questions to come in, I'll make a couple of comments as well. We recently redesigned our support page on the diem.com website, so we're adding a lot of original technical content with videos, support documents, tech tips, which is really similar to like a technical blog, and we're looking to update that often. So if you want to check it out, definitely do so, and check us out about once a month or more, and we're going to be adding things to it. As part of your maintenance and support contract, you obviously have access to the latest software for RightFax 10.6. Diem also offers the upgrade services, which we can do as well. So if you contact either your account manager or support, we can get you set up on that and help you get to 10.6. Looks like we do have a question coming in. Let me pull it up here. We have a couple. Let's see. A new feature touted in 10.6 is integration compatibility with Microsoft SCCM for client deployment. We've been using it since 9.4. So I guess they're just saying, what is the difference in 10.6 with respect to SCCM? So Joshua, Dave, if
Yeah, this is Dave Brenner from OpenText. So I can't tell you what the exact difference is. I know that from my understanding that there were some certain standards and some other probably testing that we went through. So part of it is, I think, just really the fact that it is supported. I do also think that there were some back-end changes that just made the ability for SCCM to do that client push for RightFax is just going to be slightly tighter. Again, I don't have any, pre versus post scenarios or details to share. And so, yeah, I really can't offer too much content as much as an answer. Josh, I know you might actually have some other, ideas about that, or you might have seen something.
Yeah, the only thing I'm seeing for is just it's officially supported working with it. Most of the stuff before for installs, it's just silent installs, which is really just a little command file that points to an executable, and this is just really allowing for deployment through this tool. So really through that tool, and I'm assuming the tool either does deployment through that or through MSI, is really just allowing full support for that. Full support being the key there versus we saying, it should work. It's really meaning it's going to be supported, it's fully functioning, and our basically support service will help work it and get it organized.
Okay, great. We have another couple of questions coming in here. Has 10.6 been implemented to anyone yet, and if so, how long has it been in production? Any known issues?
10.6 was released last month, so it was around, I believe, mid-November. We do definitely have some installs out there. I sit in on our triage meetings, and there have been a couple little minor bugs. Just most of them have been to do with that if you're setting up a particular module and the language set is Dutch on the server, that there was some problem with that. But as far as anything, I haven't seen anything yet that would have any dramatic impact for the primary for our primary install base. Certainly not here in North America. As far as how many installs of 10.6 are out there, really tough for me to say. It's hard for me to have visibility into that type of data. And Michelle Anderson from OpenText, she's on the line. I don't know if she has any direct knowledge about how many different or how many installs she might be aware of.
Thanks, Dave.
Michelle?
Hi, all. I'm here. So I myself have sold 3 version 10.6 license, and I have no reported problems so far. But like Dave said, oftentimes that's not information we would know. Those calls are made into our tech support team and are not always filtered back to us here in sales. But there are a few implementations out there so far.
And let me also add, keep in mind that Michelle is just one salesperson out of a small army. So so there's going to be that times X number of different reps.
Okay, let's take a look here. We have quite a few more coming in. How does the latest version of RightFax work with VMware? So I'm assuming they're asking, is it everything compatible, no issues?
Yeah, that's about the way I'd put it. We had customers running RightFax on VM for many years before we officially supported it. Ironically, much of the testing that was done in our QA was always on VM for years prior to us officially supporting it. So we started officially supporting VM back in, I believe it was RightFax 10. So here we are on 10.6 now, so we've gone down the road quite a ways. Frankly, it's very, so I spend the bulk of my day talking to customers. It is very rare I have an installation that is not going to be virtualized with either VMware or Hyper-V. And of course, I don't hear a lot about Hyper-V. It's almost always VM, but like I said, it's very rare to not have that be the standard.
Okay. Bill asks, how well does 10.6 work with Active Directory?
Well, we've worked very well with Active Directory for many years. I don't think there's any changes in the 10.6 integration for Active Directory. So, I mean, the standard is that we use Active Directory for user synchronization. so that we're actually going to pull directly from the Active Directory or LDAP. We can pull over particular groups and users into RightFax for building the RightFax profile for that individual. And it automatically, if someone gets added to a group or OU that's been synchronized, whenever that you get a new employee there, you add them in, it's automatically going to create and propagate that profile in the RightFax system. So yeah, I mean, we work great with Active Directory. Again, for the most part, it's a rare exception that I have a customer that's not using that as the method for user creation in RightFax.
Okay, great. And the next question we have here, is load balancing used in RightFax deployments?
Yes, it can be used, and it's used between the RightFax client sessions and the RightFax application servers in a server collective. So that would be where you would see a load balancer come into play. So in a collective that Josh talked about with that slide with the bees and the beehive, which I thought was very good. On the left-hand side, they showed there was 4 application nodes sharing that common beehive, if you will. And the concept is that when users try to connect to RightFax, they're connecting to the application server. And you want to make sure that when a user goes to connect, they're not always being told to go to RightFax server A. It could be A, B, C, or D, or it could be a smaller collective with just A and B. The concept is that the load balancer sits between those client connections and the application servers so that the load of client connections is being distributed to all the different application servers, and if any of the servers are down, the client connections are then connected to any remaining application servers. So that's an example of where the load balancer comes into play, and that's really the only time that we would normally, from an architectural perspective, say to use the load balancer. I'm sure we have customers using them for some other reasons potentially, but that's really the one that comes to mind, is in that collective architecture.
Okay. The next question, is SQL 2012 supported?
Yes. I don't have the hardware requirements doc up in front of me, but as I recall, 2012 is supported. And Michelle or Josh, do you remember right off the tip of your brain? I mean, I'm 99% certain.
It is. It even installs it with the SQL Express, if that's the only option you want to go with. It's 2012.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So.
Okay. There's a question in here from Dan that asks, is the presentation available to us that we're viewing today? We're going to try to put it into either like a YouTube video form or a SlideShare type format, and we'll discuss that and get that out to all the attendees likely. So I would say we'll probably be sharing that, barring any issues of doing so from OpenText. Let's see, and we're still getting a lot of good questions here. Can you address more on EWS integration? I didn't see anything in the documentation.
I can do that. It's okay. A little tricky. It's because we didn't see a lot of documentation when there's my server right here. And what it is, it's a directory for EWS on RightFax. It's really just a config file. And so if you go through it, and I don't have my Exchange server running, so I can't set it up. But basically what it allows you to do is configure. You can specify a mailbox you're working with on RightFax. You can specify a transport role. And as long as Exchange has the client access role installed, which typically by default comes with web services as part of the process, as long as it has it installed, and as long as we are able to create these basically these transport rules in there, it'll allow our gateway on the RightFax server and have basically a connector locally installed. So you don't have to have a connector put on there. So it's just a method of, so when a user sends out a fax using the old style from Outlook, where they type bracket RFax : type stuff, when Exchange goes, who does with this RFax thing? It'll look up its transport rules and see it needs to give it over to this server. And then the gateway and connector will work on them, basically solely on the RightFax side. That's what it means by the EWS.
Okay. Let's see. Are there any new licensing requirements if currently licensed for 10.0 or 10.5 Enterprise?
The only Encryption Module.
right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say as well, that the encryption module is an additional cost. But besides that, the core RightFax, if you have exchange connectors, PDF module, X number of channels, when you go from 10.0 or 10.5 to 10.6, there's no additional licensing.
Okay, and we have a couple more questions left, and I think these are fairly specific questions. Is RightFax Inc updating changes in the ID yet? In the past, it has only done that on initial sync.
I'm going to say I don't believe it's changed any. So I haven't heard of any changes in that sync, so I'm going to suggest it's the same. I guess the question is, for most customers, it's something they're not normally going to change the ID. That tends to be the anchor, how we're going to recognize what that profile is or who that profile is. So I think I haven't heard a business case, at least, to understand why a customer would want to do that.
Okay, and Mike, if you have want to explore that further, you can definitely give our support guys a call, and we can go down that road a little more. It looks like he has more information here. He said an example would be if a customer gets married.
Okay. I'd have to look into it. Yeah, I'm not certain. Josh, do you have any ideas around that?
Well, I don't think I thoroughly understand the question. So I think we're talking about the user ID. So I know what he's talking about now. So in the sync process of Active Directory, we'll import a user based on their unique or their user ID. And if they change their name, basically it would end up creating a different user, or it will try to do the same one. But it doesn't really update their user ID. There has been no changes on that. I know what you're referring to. I think I may even talk to you about it, and there's been no changes on that at this point. But
okay.
We can discuss that on a support call if we like.
Okay, and we have one more that might be kind of specific in nature as well. Kenneth says there's an 80 issue with 9.4. If an OU is deleted that is defined in Kappa sync, it can cause the sync to fail. Has this been addressed?
Again, yeah, that's something I'm not certain. I'd say that really working through support is going to be the best resource to find out if that's something that's going to, if that's the same throughout the different versions. And again, Josh, have you heard anything on that one?
As far as because we're specifically talking about 10.6 here, and as far as I can tell, there's been no changes whatsoever to the sync module and the way we bring in Active Directory. No XML changes, no XSL changes, nothing.
What I
So
would
if you're having an
offer
issue
on
in
that
10.5,
note as
you
well,
probably still have it. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Josh, it's Michelle. What I would also offer on that note, as Dave mentioned with tech support, if that was reported as a problem, there would have been what's called a jira ticket opened on that, and we can also check in to see if that's still open or if it's been addressed. I would assume this many versions later it's been addressed, but we could look into it.
Okay. Yeah, so Kenneth, if you can just contact DM support on that. If Joshua's available, he could probably help you out on that, and we'll backtrack and see if there's more detailed information for you. All right, I think we've answered all the questions. Again, if anything comes up in the next, couple hours, couple days, either contact our support or your account manager. You can email us, sales@dm.com, and don't forget our new support page. We're going to continue to add more and more information, update with tech tips and support videos, things like that, that can really help you with your current implementation. So thank you very much for listening today and sticking with us for so long. I'm going to try to get this video or presentation available to you all soon. So thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon.